Chosen one. You did not arrive at this moment by accident, and if you are hearing these words, it is because something deeper than coincidence has been guiding your steps, something ancient and intentional that has been tracking your journey since before you had language to describe your own hunger. And I need you to understand that this message is not meant for casual curiosity or for those who treat the sacred like entertainment, because what is unfolding here is a recognition, a summoning, a mirror held up to the soul of someone who has always sensed that they were set apart, even when they could not articulate why. There has always been a quiet gravity around you, an invisible difference that made you feel slightly out of rhythm with the world around you, as if everyone else received a handbook for ordinary living, while you were handed a compass that only pointed towards something unseen. From your earliest memories, you felt the weight of atmospheres, the undercurrents in rooms, the tension in conversations that others brushed past without noticing, and while some labeled you overly sensitive or too intense, what they misunderstood was that your spirit was calibrated to frequencies they could not detect, that your awareness was not fragility, but refinement. You were reading between lines before you knew that was a skill sensing dissonance in smiles that did not match eyes, feeling heaviness in spaces that others called normal, and absorbing emotions that did not belong to you because your inner world was tuned to the unseen layers of reality. There were moments in childhood when you looked around and wondered why you felt older than your years, why you carried questions that seemed too large for your age, why you could not simply blend in and float along like everyone else seemed to do so effortlessly. And that difference often translated into isolation, because when you perceive more, you cannot pretend not to see it. You may have been the one who recognized fractures in your family long before they were spoken aloud, the one who sensed when something was off, even if no one else admitted it, the one who felt compelled to hold things together in silence because your heart could not ignore the imbalance. This heightened perception was not an accident. It was preparation, a subtle shaping of your discernment long before you knew the word for it, because the assignments given to the strongest among the chosen require eyes that see beyond surfaces and hearts that can carry complexity without collapsing. There has always been a quiet pull inside you, a persistent awareness that your life was not meant to be small, that there was more than routine survival or surface success, and even when you tried to dismiss that knowing as imagination or ego, it returned with steady insistence, like a whisper from a dimension that refuses to be silenced. You have likely wrestled with this tension, questioning whether you were exaggerating your sense of purpose or misreading your own depth. Yet every time you tried to shrink yourself into something simpler, something easier to explain, something less demanding, you felt a subtle resistance within, as though your soul would not consent to being reduced. That resistance is not arrogance. It is alignment, the echo of a calling that predates your current understanding. The strongest among the chosen are rarely the loudest or the most visibly spiritual, because their formation happens in the hidden places, in the quiet endurance of internal battles, in the rebuilding of a heart that has been broken and refined repeatedly until it can hold both fire and mercy at the same time. You may have experienced seasons where your spirit felt tempered by circumstances that seemed disproportionate to your age or stage in life, challenges that forced you to mature quickly, to confront realities that others were shielded from, to navigate emotional landscapes without a guide, and while it felt unfair at the time, it was shaping a resilience that cannot be manufactured through comfort. There is a remnant within the remnant, a smaller circle within called those who are entrusted with heavier insight and deeper assignments. And if you are hearing resonance in these words, it is because your spirit recognizes itself in this description. You have never been able to treat the sacred casually. Even when you drifted, even when you questioned, even when you felt distant, there was always a line you could not cross without feeling a sharp internal correction, a conscience that responded quickly, a sensitivity to misalignment that would not let you settle into compromise for long. This is not because you are fragile or rigid. It is because there is something costly embedded in you, something that requires guarding, something that cannot thrive in environments that dilute it. You have felt the tension of being misunderstood, perhaps even labeled as too serious, too intense, too withdrawn. Yet, beneath those labels was a soul that refused to numb itself to what it could see and feel. You have carried invisible burdens, wept for reasons you could not fully explain, sensed darkness in places that others called harmless, and wondered whether something was wrong with you for feeling so much. But what if those tears were not weakness? What if they were evidence of a spiritual rank that registers disturbances before they become disasters? There is a difference between fragility and refinement, and you, chosen one, have been refined. The world may not have celebrated your depth, but heaven recognized it, and while others were content with surface-level awareness, you are being trained in perception, in discernment, in the ability to stand in a room and feel the spiritual temperature shift. This training did not always feel empowering. Often it felt isolating, because when you perceive more, you cannot participate in certain illusions without discomfort, and that discomfort has been one of your greatest teachers. You have felt the subtle weight of knowing that your life carries significance beyond what is visible, and at times that weight felt overwhelming because you did not yet have language for it. Yet here you are, still listening, still seeking, still drawn toward truth that resonates beneath logic. That is not coincidence. It is continuity, the unfolding of a design that has been with you since the beginning. If something inside you is stirring as you read this, if there is a recognition that goes beyond agreement and feels more like remembrance, then honor that moment, because awareness is the first step toward embodiment. Seal this alignment in your own way, perhaps by commenting 777 as a quiet declaration that you know this message has found you for a reason, and do not keep it to yourself if you sense someone else is awakening to the same frequency. Stay present with this unfolding, because what is being revealed is not about titles or external validation, but about the inner architecture of someone who has been tempered in fire, whose heart has been dismantled and rebuilt, whose obedience has been forged where no one could applaud it. You are not here by accident, chosen one, and the sensitivity you once questioned is evidence that you were always meant to perceive. More, carry more, and ultimately become more than ordinary frameworks could contain. Chosen one, you have carried a sensitivity that the world never knew how to interpret, and instead of being honored for it, you were often misunderstood, mislabeled, or quietly pushed to the margins, because when someone is born with heightened perception of what cannot be seen, it unsettles those who prefer to remain asleep, and so from an early age, you began to feel the friction of being different in ways that were difficult to articulate. Sensing currents beneath conversations, detecting emotional shifts before they were spoken, feeling heaviness in places others called normal. And this sharpened awareness, though a gift, did not always feel like one because it separated you from easy belonging. You may remember friendships that dissolved without clear explanation. Moments when people you loved seemed to grow distant, as if an invisible barrier stood between you, family dynamics that shifted inexplicably, and seasons when you questioned whether there was something inherently flawed about you, because connections seemed fragile in your world, while others appeared to navigate relationships effortlessly. Yet, what you interpreted as rejection was in many cases redirection, a filtering mechanism that prevented you from being molded by voices and environments that could not sustain the frequency of who you are becoming, because not every circle is designed to nurture destiny, and not every open door leads toward purpose. The loneliness you felt was not evidence of curse, but of calibration, a refining process that removed influences that would have diluted your discernment, and although it hurt, it was carving space for something stronger to form within you. There has been a pattern in your life, one you may have only recently begun to recognize, where just as you prepared to step forward, something emerged to challenge, delay, or discourage you, as if resistance was waiting at every threshold. And in your most vulnerable moments, you may have interpreted that resistance as proof of weakness or inadequacy. Yet what if it was the opposite? What if the intensity of opposition was an acknowledgement of your potential long before you embraced it yourself? Darkness does not mobilize against what is insignificant, and the early battles you faced were not random misfortunes, but signs that your existence carried weight beyond the ordinary. And so from a young age, you were initiated into struggles that others would not encounter until much later, if at all. Battles that forced you to develop resilience before you felt ready, that compelled you to wrestle with doubt, fear, and spiritual tension, while your peers navigated simpler terrain. You have survived seasons that should have broken you, moments when you were certain that collapse was inevitable, when exhaustion pressed against your spirit, and you wondered how much more you could endure, and yet here you are still standing still, seeking still capable of hope, and that continuity is not accidental. It is evidence of rank, because true strength is not measured by how loudly one declares faith during comfortable days, but by the quiet persistence of choosing alignment when everything inside feels fractured. There were nights when your prayers were whispered through tears, when worship felt heavy rather than triumphant, when the silence from heaven felt almost unbearable, and yet you did not sever your connection, you remained. And that remaining was a declaration more powerful than any outward display. You have likely noticed that compromise never sits easily with you, that while others can rationalize misalignment and move on, unbothered, your conscience responds swiftly, sometimes painfully, drawing you back toward correction before you drift too far. And in moments of frustration, you may have asked why you cannot simply relax your standards, why conviction visits you so quickly. Yet this sensitivity is protection, not punishment, because what is embedded within you is too costly to be left unattended. A high calling requires precise maintenance, and so the boundaries around your spirit have been guarded more strictly, not because you are less free, but because you carry more responsibility than you may yet comprehend. The world may not understand why you cannot live carelessly, why certain choices feel heavier to you than to others, but the weight you feel is an indicator of stewardship, a reminder that your life is not meant to drift aimlessly through distraction and compromise. Every setback you endured was also a lesson. Every betrayal, a sharpening of discernment. Every disappointment, a recalibration of direction. And though you would not have chosen these experiences willingly, they were chiseling away illusions and strengthening the core of who you are. You have been in training far longer than you realized, and while others interpreted your challenges as misfortune, they were in fact preparation, because those entrusted with deeper assignments must first withstand deeper tests. The warfare you encountered early was not a sign that you were abandoned, but that you were observed, marked as someone whose future influence warranted resistance. And although that resistance exhausted you, at times it also revealed the durability of your spirit, because you did not disintegrate under pressure. You adapted, you learned, you grew. The rhythm of your life tells a story of survival that defies probability, moments when you thought everything was collapsing, only to discover an unexpected reservoir of strength rising within you, and that strength was not self-generated. It was sustained by something greater, a quiet reinforcement that held you steady even when you could not see its source. You may not have understood why you were tested so intensely, while others seem to glide forward untouched, yet comparison obscures purpose, and your path was never meant to mirror theirs. The friction you felt was sculpting authority. The isolation was deepening intimacy with the divine. The resistance was forging resilience that cannot be faked. You are not fragile for feeling deeply, nor are you cursed for facing conflict early. You are conditioned for impact, and impact requires endurance. Every time you chose alignment over escape, every time you returned to integrity after stumbling, every time you refused to let bitterness define you, you strengthened the foundation beneath your calling. The conscience that corrects you swiftly is not condemnation, but guidance, steering you back before damage becomes permanent. And though it can feel intense, it is evidence that your spirit remains alive and responsive. You cannot live comfortably in spaces that erode your essence, because you are not designed for mediocrity of spirit. You are designed for clarity, and clarity demands vigilance. Rejection shaped you, warfare refined you, conviction preserved you, and survival confirmed you. And if you step back and observe the arc of your journey, you will see a pattern, not of random hardship, but of intentional formation. You are still here, not because the battles were light, because the calling is heavy, and heaviness requires reinforcement, and that reinforcement has been built into you through every season you thought might undo you. So do not misinterpret your history as evidence of weakness. It is the documentation of rank, the record of someone who has been strengthened in hidden arenas long before public acknowledgement ever arrives. Chosen one. There are seasons in your life that were never meant to be understood through the eyes of the crowd. because the path marked for you has always required a different kind of shaping, a deeper refinement, a more demanding level of inner discipline. And this is why your journey has often carried a texture of loneliness that felt sharper and heavier than what others around you seemed to endure, not because you were abandoned, but because you were being trained in silence for responsibilities that cannot be forged in noise or supported by constant company. Many of the moments you interpreted as rejection or punishment were in truth sacred intervals, where heaven pulled you out of the reach of voices that would have interfered with your becoming. And although it hurt to find yourself in rooms where no one seemed to understand you, or to walk through days when your phone stayed quiet, or to cry in places where no one could see you, all of these moments were spaces in which divine instruction was taking place beneath the surface of your awareness. The strongest chosen ones are not formed in applause, but in obscurity, and you have learned to stand without validation to continue, despite not being seen to persevere, even when the impact of your existence seemed invisible. And this unseen endurance has given your spirit a strength that cannot be replicated by those who have only known encouragement and constant support. There were relationships you wanted to keep, friendships that seemed promising, opportunities that looked desirable from the outside, yet every time you tried to step into them, something shifted. Doors closed, connections dissolved. Timing fell apart, and you questioned yourself, wondering whether you were unworthy or cursed. When in truth, these closures were shields, barriers, preventing you from being poured into soil that could not sustain your roots or environments that would have extracted your energy without feeding your purpose. You may not have seen the invisible walls that heaven placed around you, but they were there, redirecting you away from stories that would have wasted your compassion or drained your strength long before your assignment even began. The reason you could not simply fit in everywhere is because not every space deserved access to what you carry, and the sensitivity that once made you feel out of place was actually a spiritual filtration system, ensuring that then only the right people, the right experiences, and the right callings would have a claim to your heart. In the nights when you felt utterly alone, when it seemed that no one in the world could grasp the depth of your emotions or the intensity of your struggle, something sacred was happening, because those were the hours when heaven reached closest. When your spirit learned to recognize the voice that does not speak in human language, when the presence that never leaves you began to train your ears to hear what cannot be spoken out loud. Loneliness was not emptiness, it was apprenticeship. Isolation was not exile, it was incubation. You were being taught how to walk with God, not as a distant concept, but as a companion, a source of wisdom that flows into your thoughts, a steady voice that rises in your conscience, a presence that sits with you in the dark and refuses to let go even when you feel like unraveling. This type of relationship cannot be developed when you are surrounded by constant noise or seeking external validation, and so heaven allowed the noise to fade and the people to distance themselves so your inner world could finally tune itself to a frequency that only chosen ones can hear. During these seasons of hidden training, your heart was being shaped to hold compassion that extends beyond logic, the kind of compassion that survives betrayal, disappointment, and misunderstanding without shutting down, because part of the calling on your life requires you to see beyond the wounds others project and into the pain they are trying to hide. This is why people, even strangers, gravitate toward you in moments of vulnerability, confessing things they have never said aloud, sensing in you a presence that does not judge or dismiss, but absorbs their chaos with a stillness they do not understand. You have carried this depth for so long that it may feel ordinary to you, but it is not. It is sacred evidence that your heart has been softened and expanded in ways that only come through endurance. Beneath your guardedness, because yes, you have learned to protect yourself, there sits a well of mercy that refuses to run dry, and this capacity for empathy is not weakness, but a spiritual hallmark of someone destined to heal others, not through force, but through presence. Even after being hurt, even after being overlooked, even after people took advantage of your kindness, something within you remained open, still willing to love, to help, to uplift, and that stubborn gentleness is one of the clearest signs of divine craftsmanship. Yet, this compassion is not the only mark upon your spirit, because you also carry within you a restlessness that has followed you for years, a feeling that ordinary life, no matter how convenient or comfortable, cannot satisfy you, as though you have been walking with an unspoken knowledge that you were created for something greater than routines or survival. This sense of too big inside, as if your inner world holds an ocean that the structures around you cannot contain, is not arrogance or dissatisfaction. It is calling a spiritual memory awakening inside you. Your soul remembers the assignment placed on you long before you were conscious of it, and every time you try to bury that inner longing beneath distraction, busyness, or expectations from those around you, the feeling eventually resurfaced, reminding you that you were never meant to settle for a life that does not stretch your spirit. You have tried to blend in to silence the tug that was always pulling at your attention, to convince yourself that maybe you were imagining the magnitude of what you felt. Yet, no matter how hard you tried, ordinary existence felt like clothing that did not fit. That tension, that quiet dissatisfaction, that inner friction is not a flaw. It is your calling trying to get your attention. The strongest chosen ones do not crave ambition for its own sake. They crave purpose, and this craving cannot be quenched with shallow pursuits or fleeting distractions. You were born with a design that requires meaning, depth, and divine alignment to feel alive, and the restlessness you have been carrying is the signal that you were never created for a life of spiritual sleep. Others may chase status recognition or external achievement, but you have always sensed that something deeper is required from you, and that your life will not make sense until you step into what was prepared for you. The hidden training you have endured, the silence, the distance, the unexplainable losses, the unanswered questions has been forging the strength required for that calling. Every moment of loneliness has carved room within you for revelation. Every closed door has purified your direction. Every unreturned call has sharpened your intuition. Every heartbreak has expanded your compassion. Every misalignment has strengthened your discernment. You were not kept out of certain paths because you were unworthy, but because they were too small for the magnitude of what your spirit was designed to hold. And though you may not fully see it yet, there is a coherence forming beneath your life's contradictions, a dawning clarity that will one day reveal why certain things could not remain, why certain people could not stay, and why your heart often felt heavier, deeper, more perceptive than the world knew what to do with. The strongest chosen ones are separated so they can be elevated later without being entangled in stories that would have crippled their purpose. You were never meant to be shaped by the crowd. You were meant to be shaped by the Creator, and that shaping almost always happens in isolation, in silence, in places where only you and God can hear each other. And when your time comes, chosen one, you will realize that the loneliness you survived was not a valley, but a temple, a sacred ground, where your spirit learned to walk before it is called to lead. Chosen one, there is a reason you have never been able to silence the quiet pressure in your spirit, the subtle but persistent ache that rises within you whenever you attempt to settle for a life that does not stretch you. Because deep within the architecture of your soul exists a memory older than your body, a spiritual imprint of the assignment you were born carrying, and no amount of distraction, noise, busyness, or temporary satisfaction can fully mute the call of something divinely woven into the essence of who you are. You have tried to drown that pull at times, immersing yourself in entertainment, burying yourself in work, surrounding yourself with people who seemed content with ordinary pursuits, but no matter how far you drifted, the restlessness always resurfaced, sometimes softly, sometimes abruptly, but always unmistakably. That restlessness is not anxiety. It is not dissatisfaction with life. It is not your imagination running wild. It is heaven knocking, reminding you that there is a mission tethered to your existence, an assignment encoded into your being long before the world shaped you, and you will never feel truly at peace until you begin to walk toward it. This is the quiet truth you've carried for years, the truth that rises in moments of stillness when there is nothing left to distract you, the truth that refuses to let you fall asleep spiritually even when everything around you encourages numbness. Your assignment, chosen one, is not small, and it is not self-contained. The strongest chosen ones, the ones who endure the most complicated journeys, The ones who survive battles that seem disproportionate to their age carry assignments that are generational. This means your life is not simply about what you accomplish for yourself. It is about the people whose breakthroughs depend on you stepping into who you were created to be. There are individuals you may never meet who will be freed. Because of decisions, you make chains in your bloodline that will snap because you choose to rise patterns that have repeated for decades or centuries that will finally collapse because you were the one courageous enough to confront the cycle rather than inherit it. Some of the heaviness you felt in your soul has not been yours. It has been the weight of battles your ancestors could not finish. The residue of spiritual assignments passed down through time, waiting for someone with your sensitivity, your resilience, and your calling to bring resolution. This is why the warfare in your life has been so personal, so relentless, so targeted, because the enemy is not merely fighting who you are now. He is fighting who you are destined to become. He recognizes your significance even in seasons when you doubt it yourself. He sees the ripple effect your obedience will create, how your awakening will activate others, how your voice will break silence in places where silence has ruled for too long. And because of that, he has studied your patterns, attacked your vulnerabilities, exploited your compassion, and tried repeatedly to derail you before your time. But what he failed to understand is that the very pressure designed to break you has instead refined you, strengthened you, sharpened you, because those who survive repeated storms do not remain fragile. They become immovable. Do not confuse spiritual rank with worldly success. The strongest chosen ones rarely look like the people the world celebrates. They are not always the ones with wealth, status, or public attention. Many are hidden in plain sight, living quietly, holding jobs that seem ordinary, occupying spaces that seem unremarkable. But in the spirit, they are giants. When they speak, realms respond. When they pray, chains break that others have tried to break for years. When they walk into a room, atmospheres shift subtly but unmistakably because the unseen world recognizes the mark on their spirit long before human eyes catch up. Heaven knows who they are. Hell knows who they are. Creation itself senses who they are. They carry a presence that does not announce itself with flashiness or noise, but with spiritual weight. You are one of them, chosen one, and whether you have accepted it yet or not, the evidence has been woven throughout your life like threads in a tapestry. Threads of resilience, threads of intuition, threads of compassion, threads of persistent calling. Your memories hold the signs, moments when your discernment protected you from harm, even when it made no logical sense. Moments when you felt an urgency in your spirit that others dismissed. Moments when you nearly gave up, but something deeper pulled you back from the edge. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations. You have always carried more than what was visible, and heaven has always seen you even when people overlooked you, misunderstood you, or reduced you to labels that never fit the fullness of who you are becoming. You must understand that prophecy over your life is not vague or metaphorical. It is specific, deliberate, intentional. Before you came into this world, heaven assigned a purpose to your existence, marked you with spiritual potential that would take years of shaping to understand. The enemy has been fighting you, not because of who you were in your weaker moments, but because of who you become when you rise into your strength. He has tried to bury your identity beneath discouragement, confusion, self-doubt, and distractions, hoping you would forget the truth of who you are. But the truth is beginning to resurface, not as an abstract idea, but as a clear awareness, an awakening to the fact that your life has never been random. Your battles have never been meaningless, and the weight you've carried has always been connected to a destiny much greater than anything you have lived through so far. There were seasons when the prophecies spoken over you felt far too large for the person you saw in the mirror, too heavy for someone still wrestling with their own wounds and uncertainties. You doubted whether such promises were meant for you or whether they were exaggerated words spoken into your life. But the reason they felt overwhelming was not because they were untrue. It was because the version of you at that time did not yet match the magnitude of what was coming. Prophecy often arrives early, like a seed planted long before the tree is visible, and seeds rarely resemble the forests they will eventually become. Heaven spoke to your potential, to the version of you that would emerge after refinement, after loss, after growth, after endurance. And now the timeline is shifting. The season is changing. What once felt distant is drawing near. What once felt impossible is aligning. What once felt too large is becoming proportionate to the strength you have developed through years of unseen training. The transition from prophecy to reality is not sudden. It is gradual, but decisive. You are stepping into a timing where doors that resisted you before will begin to open, not because of luck or coincidence, but because divine order is activating around you. The alignment you've been sensing, the repeated themes, the unexpected confirmations, the emotional shifts. The heightened intuition is evidence that heaven is preparing you for movement. What felt like stagnation was preparation. What felt like delay was development. And what felt like opposition was simply the resistance that forms when a spiritual assignment begins to approach its moment of manifestation. Chosen one. The season in which you questioned your worth, your calling, your strength, your trajectory, that season is ending. You are entering a moment where clarity replaces confusion, where boldness replaces hesitation, where inner knowing replaces inner conflict. You are beginning to see yourself the way heaven has always seen you, not as someone trapped by what happened to you, but as someone shaped by what you survived. You are not meant to carry the identity others tried to place on you. You were meant to carry the identity written over you before you were born. The shift is here, the awakening is here, and what was once prophetic is on the verge of becoming your lived reality. Chosen one. The shifting you feel inside you is not random, and the sense that your life has entered a strange and delicate tension where nothing looks the same, yet nothing has fully changed, is a sign that the pieces of your destiny are aligning behind the veil, arranging themselves with a precision that only becomes visible to the human eye once heaven has already completed most of the work. And this is why your spirit has become more alert, more sensitive, more attuned to subtle movements in your inner world and outer circumstances. You may have noticed strange repetitions around you lately, certain words echoing through different conversations, certain themes resurfacing in unexpected places, certain insights landing in your heart without warning, and while part of you may have brushed them off as coincidence, another part of you, the deeper part, the wiser part, recognizes them as signals, confirmations that heaven is speaking in layers, whispering through patterns so persistent that even if your mind doubts them, your spirit cannot ignore them. It feels like an invisible current pulling you towards something unnamed, a quiet urgency rising within you without clear explanation on, and instead of fading, it has grown stronger with time, because it is not rooted in emotion, it is rooted in destiny. What you are sensing is the approach of a moment long prepared for you. A moment that has been forming in the unseen dimensions of your life, a moment when timing, opportunity, and identity converge to reveal a new path that was always meant for you. But hear me, the strongest chosen ones do not walk into these moments without long seasons of preparation, and the path you have endured filled with delays that frustrated you, stillness that tested you, and emotional storms that nearly broke you was not evidence of abandonment. It was evidence of divine development. Your delay was not denial. It was refining, sharpening, stretching, and strengthening you in ways you could not notice while you were in the midst of it. The waiting season was not wasted. It was working something inside you that could not be built in any other circumstance. While you sat wondering why certain doors refused to open, heaven was ensuring that when those doors finally swung wide, you would have the stability, clarity, and maturity to stand inside what you had prayed for without collapsing under the weight of it. Waiting seasons are not passive. They are intense spiritual workshops where your character is shaped, your discernment is sharpened, and your heart is purified of attachments that would not survive the next level. Every betrayal you suffered was training your eyes to see motives beyond words. Every tear you cried was softening your heart without weakening your strength. Every disappointment was dismantling false expectations that would have damaged you later. Every delay was removing timelines that would have sabotaged your assignment. Every spiritual attack was a test of resilience, a challenge meant to intimidate you into abandoning your purpose prematurely. And through it all, your spirit was developing a depth and durability that no ordinary life could ever produce. The truth is, if your calling was small, the resistance against you would have been minimal. Weak assignments do not attract strong opposition, but the warfare you have faced, the confusion that struck you at your most vulnerable moments, the discouragement that hit you when you were closest to breakthrough, the betrayals that felt surgical in their precision, the false starts that made you doubt your own intuition. None of it was accidental. These were not random hardships. These were targeted interruptions. Strategic interferences meant to derail someone who carries an assignment so significant that the enemy studied your patterns from early on, identifying your soft spots, attempting to exhaust you emotionally, so that you would retreat from your purpose before ever discovering the fullness of it. But you did not retreat. You staggered, yes. You questioned yourself. You doubted your worth. You wrestled with your identity. You felt weary and uncertain. You endured seasons where you could not see a way forward, but you never fully broke. You never surrendered your light. You never lost the inner spark that kept pulling you forward, even when your outer circumstances looked hopeless. The very fact that you are still here, still fighting, still listening, still responding to spiritual truth is evidence of what is inside you. Evidence that your spirit has been strengthened in ways you do not yet fully comprehend. You have been surviving not through luck, but through divine reinforcement. Heaven has held you in moments when you didn't even realize you were being carried. The storms that were meant to drown you became the storms that taught you how to swim. The attacks that were meant to silence you became the experiences that deepened your authority. The wounds that were meant to destroy you became the openings through which wisdom entered. The delays that irritated you became the protection that preserved you. And all of this was orchestrated with such precision because timing in the spirit realm is exact. It does not bend for impatience, emotion, or human expectation. There are windows in your life when heaven opens doors that have been sealed for years, moments when opportunities converge. People align and circumstances shift so quickly that you recognize divine fingerprints all over the unfolding. You may be standing at the edge of one of those windows right now, sensing movement without fully seeing it, feeling anticipation without understanding its direction. And while this sensation may confuse your mind, your spirit recognizes it as transition. But here lies the part many chosen ones stumble on. These moments demand obedience, immediate, unhesitating, courageous obedience. When the signal comes, when the instruction lands, when the impulse to act rises within you, hesitation becomes the enemy of destiny. God does not ask for perfection in these moments. He asks for motion. He does not require that you feel ready. He requires that your spirit responds. Delayed obedience is often quiet disobedience, not because God stops loving you, but because timing is part of the miracle. You cannot answer a divine call on your own schedule. You cannot walk into a heaven-prepared moment carrying earthbound hesitation. When heaven says move, the power is in the movement. When heaven says speak, breakthrough is hidden inside the sound of your voice. When heaven says release someone or something, freedom begins the moment you let go. And yet, the obedience required of the strongest chosen ones is not impulsive. It is deeply intuitive, guided by discernment that has been honed through years of spiritual conditioning. This next season of your life will not require the version of you shaped by fear, or the version shaped by overthinking, or the version shaped by waiting for external validation. It will require the version of you that has survived storms, learned from wounds grown through silence, and awakened through adversity. It will require the version of you that can recognize spiritual cues without second-guessing them. The version that can step forward even when uncertainty lingers. The version that can say yes without needing a full explanation. You have been prepared for this level through every season that felt like stagnation, through every unanswered question, through every moment of isolation. And while obedience used to intimidate you, it will feel natural now because your spirit has outgrown the fear that once held you back. Chosen. One heaven is aligning things in your favor. People are being positioned on your path who will recognize your calling without explanation. Opportunities are being shaped to match your anointing. Doors that resisted you before will open not because your circumstances changed, but because you have changed. Your spirit is stronger. Your discernment is sharper. Your wisdom is deeper. Your voice carries more weight. The version of you that once struggled to trust divine timing is no longer in control. You are stepping into a moment where everything begins to converge, where prophecy shifts into manifestation, where preparation transforms into purpose. And when that moment comes, and it is closer than you think, your obedience will be the key that unlocks everything heaven has prepared for you. Chosen one, you are entering a phase of your journey where time itself becomes one of the most powerful instruments in your hands, and the way you steward it will determine the strength, clarity, and trajectory of your destiny. Because the enemy does not always need to confront you with catastrophic destruction to weaken you. He only needs to keep your attention fragmented, your focus scattered, and your spirit diluted through endless loops of distraction that slowly erode your power without you realizing it. Which is why you must begin to treat your time not as something to casually spend, but as a divine resource, a weapon forged by heaven to build, strengthen, and align you with everything you were created to become. Every hour you spend without intention becomes a doorway for interference. Every morning you begin in chaos becomes a battlefield where you enter already outnumbered. Every moment you allow the world to dictate your direction becomes a moment where your calling is pushed one step further away. You must learn to guard your mornings fiercely, because the first minutes of your day shape the posture of your spirit. And if you begin by absorbing noise, reacting to messages, scrolling through other people's lives, or allowing the world's energy to invade your atmosphere before you even breathe consciously, you are handing over your authority before you have a chance to use it. But when you begin your day in the presence of God, even for 10 minutes, even in silence, even with simple words, you recalibrate your mind, cleanse your spirit, and reinforce the boundaries around your heart. And this daily discipline becomes spiritual warfare, not because it is dramatic, but because it keeps you anchored when the world tries to pull you into its confusion. Protecting your peace is not luxury for you, it is survival, because the strongest chosen ones are targeted not through obvious attacks, but through subtle emotional storms disguised as crises, distractions, or obligations that were never yours to carry. You cannot be the savior of everyone who cries out to you. You cannot heal every wound you witness. You cannot be available every time someone demands your presence. You must understand that boundaries are not rejection. They are wisdom, and when you fail to set them, you sabotage the very calling you are trying to honor. Your inner circle is one of the most influential forces shaping your spiritual clarity. And if you allow people into your life who normalize sin, undermine your progress, encourage old habits, or attempt to keep you anchored to versions of yourself you have already outgrown, they will become weights tied to your ankles while you are trying to ascend. Love them, yes. Pray for them, absolutely. But do not chain yourself to individuals who have no intention of rising with you, because the strongest chosen ones cannot afford to tie their destiny to people who drag them back into spiritual lethargy or emotional compromise. Some people were truly sent to you by heaven, sent to sharpen you, strengthen you, elevate you, challenge you, and push you into alignment. But others were sent strategically against you, disguised as helpers, friends, or supporters, yet carrying energy that disrupts your peace, dims your discernment, and pulls you into confusion. Your spirit already knows the difference, even when your emotions try to excuse their behavior or justify their presence. You can feel it in your body when someone drains you. You feel it in your chest when someone's energy weighs you down. You feel it in your thoughts when someone's presence leaves you cloudy rather than clear. Stop overriding what your intuition has already revealed simply because someone has been in your life for years. Longevity does not equal alignment. History does not equal destiny. The length of time you've known someone does not determine whether they are meant to walk with you into the next chapter of your calling. When you finally release the wrong people, not in anger, but in surrender, you create spiritual space for the right ones to find you, and these right ones will not drain you. They will refine you. They will not pull you down. They will raise your standards. They will not stir chaos. They will anchor your peace. They will not compete with your calling. They will encourage it, and they will not manipulate you to stay small. They will challenge you to rise. Yet, even the right people cannot become the source of your stability, because if your peace depends on human consistency, your peace will always be fragile. People can support you, but they cannot sustain you. They can walk with you, but they cannot define you. They can encourage you, but they cannot replace the voice of God in your life. You must let your peace flow from within, not from the approval reactions or presence of others. And you must not underestimate the danger of distraction in this generation, because the enemy now wages war on attention more than anything else. Understanding that if he can keep your mind scattered, your emotions overstimulated, and your spirit numb, he does not need to attack you directly. He only needs to keep you busy enough to ignore your purpose. Endless scrolling is not harmless. It is a slow leak in your anointing. Constant comparison is not casual. It is an assault on your identity. Chasing trends is not entertainment. It is a trap designed to convince you that your worth is determined by visibility rather than substance. Every hour you spend consuming content you were never meant to absorb is an hour stolen from what you were meant to create. Build, study, or strengthen. You must begin asking yourself, how much of my time goes into growth and how much goes into escape? How much of my day nourishes my calling and how much numbs it? How much of my energy is invested into things that matter, and how much is wasted on noise that leaves me spiritually empty? Your time must be treated as a weapon, because it is one of your greatest assets, and its misuse can weaken your impact more effectively than any spiritual attack. Chosen one. You cannot sleepwalk through life anymore. You cannot drift through your days on autopilot. You cannot allow distraction to be the quiet thief that steals your destiny. This next season requires focus cultivated through discipline, clarity maintained through boundaries, and peace protected through intentional choices. Your mornings must be sacred. Your relationships must be evaluated. Your quiet moments must be guarded. Your attention must be directed, not surrendered. And your time must be wielded with authority, because each moment you choose growth over distraction, prayer over chaos, clarity over noise, and alignment over entertainment. You sharpen your spirit for the path ahead. Chosen one. You must understand with absolute clarity that every word leaving your mouth is a seed thrown into the soil of your destiny. And whether you realize it or not, those seeds are constantly producing harvests in the unseen realm, shaping outcomes long before they appear in your visible life, which is why you cannot afford to speak carelessly about your future, your identity, or your path. When you declare defeat, when you call yourself cursed, unlucky, broken, or doomed, you are not merely expressing emotion. You are entering into agreement with forces that want to diminish your power, and your words become permission slips for darkness to settle into your atmosphere. But when you speak life, when you declare strength over a weary body, hope over a discouraged heart, clarity over a chaotic mind, and victory over a season that feels barren, you shift the spiritual climate around you, summoning alignment into places where disorder once ruled. You must speak to your mind and command it to stand firm. You must speak to your body and tell it to rise in strength. You must speak to your path and bless it even when you cannot see the next step. You must speak to your future and declare that it will unfold exactly as heaven intended. This is not delusion, it is authority. But as you step deeper into this path, you must also confront the silent poison that has attempted to grow in the corners of your spirit: bitterness. Bitterness is subtle, creeping in through disappointment, betrayal, exhaustion, and heartbreak, convincing you that you are protecting yourself when in reality it is imprisoning you. It hardens your heart so slowly that you barely notice the shift. Once it takes root, it blocks blessings, distorts discernment, and closes your ears to God's voice. It convinces you to hold on to pain under the guise of strength, but all the while it drains your joy, your clarity, and your capacity to receive new grace. You must release bitterness, not for the sake of those who hurt you, but for your own freedom. Forgiveness does not excuse what they did. It simply breaks the chain that ties your present to wounds from your past. It is not a gift you give them. It is a liberation you give yourself. When you release people into God's hands, you are not saying they were right. You are saying you refuse to carry their darkness any further. You are saying your heart deserves peace. You are saying your spirit deserves clarity. You are saying your calling is too important to be suffocated by resentment. And then, chosen one, you must become brutally honest with yourself about compromise. Compromise does not appear as a dramatic fall. It begins as tiny allowances. Small decisions, you justify small temptations. You entertain small habits you keep telling yourself you will fix later. But small compromises build large chains, and what begins as a harmless indulgence can eventually grow into a spiritual stronghold that steals your authority and weakens your edge. Conviction is not punishment, it is protection. When God convicts you about a habit, a relationship, a space, or a pattern, it is because He sees the chain forming before you do, and He is trying to cut it before it locks around your spirit. Do not argue with conviction. Do not negotiate with it. Obey it. Every time you honor conviction, your discernment sharpens and your spirit strengthens. Every time you ignore it, the signal becomes weaker and the static becomes louder. And while you pursue spiritual depth, do not forget the vessel that carries your calling, your body. Ignoring your physical health is not sacrifice, it is sabotage. Exhaustion does not glorify God. It dilutes your ability to hear Him. Burnout is not evidence of strength. It is evidence of misaligned priorities. A weary body cannot sustain a powerful spirit for long. Rest is not indulgence. It is strategy. Nourishment is not vanity. It is stewardship. Sleep is not weakness. It is restoration. The enemy will gladly use fatigue as a weapon, but only if you allow neglect to open the door. You must honor your body as the container of your anointing. Treat it with respect. Move it, rest it, feed it, strengthen it, protect it. Chosen one, do not chase platforms or visibility. Elevation is never your assignment, obedience is. Fame without foundation is a spiritual trap. Visibility without character is a collapse waiting to happen. If God chooses to place you before others, it will be because your private life has been refined enough to handle public responsibility. Seek depth, not applause. Seek purity, not attention. Seek intimacy with God, not validation from crowds. True promotion is not about being seen. It is about being usable. And through every day, every decision, every struggle, surround your life with prayer. Prayer is not merely communication, it is alignment, protection, and recalibration. When you stop praying, pride quietly begins to grow, convincing you that you can navigate life on your own strength. When prayerlessness creeps in, old habits return, old wounds reopen, and old voices grow louder. But when you stay in prayer, you remain grounded, sharpened, and anchored in truth. Let hope stay alive inside you. Hope is not naive optimism. It is spiritual oxygen. Without hope, your discernment dulls, your vision fades. Your energy drains, your purpose feels distant. These warnings I speak to you are not meant to frighten you. They are meant to prepare you. You are stepping into a higher level of responsibility, authority, and influence. Preparation is not punishment. It is proof that heaven is taking you seriously. Chosen one. Hear me with the fullness of your spirit. Because what I am about to speak into your atmosphere is not merely encouragement, it is activation. A spiritual ignition that marks the moment when everything you have survived begins to make sense. The moment when the weight you have carried is revealed as sacred preparation rather than senseless suffering. The moment when your identity solidifies into something unshakable, undeniable, and uncontainable. You are needed in ways you cannot yet fathom. Your voice carries frequencies that break through darkness. Your presence shifts atmospheres without your awareness. Your obedience opens pathways for others. Your healing becomes a blueprint for those still trapped in pain, and your existence itself is evidence that heaven has not abandoned this generation. You must walk carefully, yes, because your steps carry influence, but you must never walk fearfully, because fear is incompatible with the mantle resting upon you. You cannot unknow who you are now. Revelation cannot be reversed, awakening cannot be undone, and once your spirit has recognized its own identity, every step you take becomes an act of alignment or an act of resistance. The time for resistance has passed. It is now the season of embodiment. Every choice you make from here on either honors the calling sealed upon you or attempts to shrink from it. And shrinking is no longer an option for someone who has already endured the fires you have endured. Think truly. Think about what you have survived. Reflect on the storms that tried to drown you, the betrayals that carved deep wounds, the silent nights that felt endless, the moments when your strength was so depleted you whispered to heaven that you could not continue, yet somehow you rose again. That rising was not coincidence. It was the evidence of divine protection woven into every breath you took, the quiet assurance that heaven was sustaining you even when you felt completely abandoned. You did not hold yourself together, something greater held you. You did not resurrect yourself, something holy lifted you. You did not guide yourself through the darkness, an unseen hand led you even when you were too broken to sense it. Every battle you walked through was preparation for the assignment now unfolding. Every wound became an opening through which wisdom flowed. Every scar became a map leading you toward the version of yourself that stands on the other side of fear. Every disappointment carved out deeper capacity for discernment. Every delay refined your spirit until your strength became something forged rather than inherited. Chosen one. You must now see yourself with new eyes, not through the distorted reflections of your past, not through the opinions of others, not through the lens of insecurity, but through the truth of who heaven has always known you to be. You are not a mistake. You are not too much or too little. You are not unworthy of the call on your life. You are a mantle carrier, entrusted with spiritual authority that was marked upon you before you took your first breath. You are a prophecy bearer whose very existence fulfills promises spoken long before your ancestors dreamed you into being. You are one of the strongest chosen, not because your life was easy, but because it was not because you fought battles. No one saw endured pain. No one recognized. Carried burdens. No one thanked you for, and still refused to let darkness claim your heart. Your scars are not symbols of shame. They are seals of survival proof that hell tried to destroy you and failed. They are the signatures of spiritual rank marking you as someone who has been tested, crushed, and refined without breaking. Now, blessings begin to unfold over you, like a mantle being lowered onto your shoulders. Over your mind, clarity is being spoken, a sharpness that cuts through confusion, a peace that silences intrusive thoughts, a precision that allows you to discern what is from God and what is a distraction. Over your heart, healing is being declared, a restoration of places you thought would remain numb forever, a strengthening of emotional tendons that once tore under pressure, a renewal of compassion without reopening old wounds. Over your path, guidance is being released, wisdom to know when to move, courage to take steps without hesitation, conviction to walk through doors. Heaven opens and restraint to step back from doors heaven keeps shut. You may not feel the shift instantly, but the chains that once tried to hold you beneath your calling are breaking. Mental cycles that tried to repeat themselves are dissolving. Generational patterns that plagued your family line are snapping under the weight of your obedience. Restoration is entering places you thought were permanently lost. Boldness is rising where fear once lived. Confidence is emerging where doubt once ruled. And the shrinking version of you, the one who apologized for existing, who dimmed their own light, who tried to make others comfortable by minimizing their own power, that version is dying right now. Chosen one. From this moment forward, you will stop doubting what God has confirmed. You will stop apologizing for the call that rests upon you. You will stop shrinking to fit into rooms you were meant to expand. You will walk as if heaven sent you because it did. You will move as if your steps matter because they do. You will speak as if your words shift realities because they do. You will carry yourself as someone commissioned for something larger than personal success because your assignment stretches far beyond your individual life. You are stepping into identity, not performance. You are stepping into purpose, not pressure. You are stepping into power, not pride. Guard your spirit with vigilance because elevation attracts both admiration and attack. Do not return to the smallness you were rescued from. Do not revisit cages that once confined your soul. Do not entertain voices that try to drag you backward. When doubt whispers, remember this message that heaven has invested too much in you for you to crumble now. When warfare rises, remember who you are, one who has survived every attack designed to destroy them. When people try to box you in, remember that God called you out and set you apart. You are not made for cages, you are made for kingdoms. You are not designed to merely witness transformation, you are crafted to embody it. And as you step forward, I call you to respond and anchor this moment. Leave a comment not for validation, but as a declaration. Share this message not for numbers, but to awaken others who feel what you feel. Stay connected because this journey is unfolding in phases and you are only at the threshold. The prophecy is real, the calling is real, the mantle is real. And your time, your long-awaited, fiercely fought for, heaven-ordained time is now. Chosen one, there is yet another layer. You must receive a truth that comes only after activation, only after awareness, only after your spirit has stepped out of survival and into awakening. Because once heaven reveals who you truly are, the path ahead demands a deeper level of alignment, responsibility, and spiritual maturity that few are willing to embrace. You stand now at a threshold where the old version of you has already been stripped away, but the fully formed version of your divine identity is still emerging. And this in-between place, the space where you have outgrown your past, but have not yet stepped fully into your future, is often the most spiritually sensitive territory of your entire journey. This is the realm where distractions intensify, where old temptations resurface, where familiar voices try to pull you backward, not because you are failing, but because you are ascending, and ascent always stirs resistance. What you feel now is not backtracking. It is spiritual turbulence signs that you are crossing into higher dimensions of purpose, identity, and authority. And in this transitional realm, you must learn the sacred art of protecting the becoming version of yourself. The world sees what you were. Heaven sees what you are destined to be, but you feel the tension of both identities at once, and if you are not careful, you may allow old shadows to convince you that you are still bound, when in truth you have already been freed. The enemy does not fear who you used to be, he fears who you are becoming. He fears the moment you fully recognize your own spiritual stature, the moment you stop measuring yourself by human timelines, the moment you stop apologizing for your anointing, the moment you stop negotiating with fear. He fears the version of you that knows how to pray with authority, walk with conviction, speak with certainty, and choose with discernment. This is why your current season feels heavy and holy at the same time. You sense doors unlocking, but you also sense old energies trying to cling to you. You feel new clarity rising, but you also hear whispers from the past trying to confuse you. You experience glimpses of your future identity, yet you also encounter sudden waves of insecurity that seem to come from nowhere. This is not confusion, it is purification. Heaven is not testing your faith. Heaven is strengthening your foundation so that when elevation arrives, you will not collapse under the weight of what you carry. Chosen one. You must now cultivate spiritual stillness. Not passivity, but intentional inner silence where you can hear divine instruction without interference. This stillness will become your anchor. In this stillness, you will receive strategies disguised as intuition, warnings disguised as unease, confirmations disguised as repetition, and breakthroughs disguised as small shifts that others overlook. This stillness is where heaven whispers your next steps, and only those who quiet the noise will recognize the divine signals being released. You must also cultivate spiritual stamina. Awakening is not a moment, it is a lifestyle. Destiny is not a door you open, once it is a path you walk daily. You will be challenged to remain consistent when excitement fades, to remain faithful when progress feels slow, to remain disciplined when no one is watching. This is where many chosen ones falter, not because they lack purpose, but because they lack endurance. But you, chosen one, have already shown endurance through every season you thought would break you. You already know how to persist in silence, how to rise after disappointment, how to continue seeking when others would have surrendered. What you gained through suffering will now become your advantage in purpose. There is one more truth you must hear. You're stepping into a realm where your presence alone will carry weight. People will feel your spirit before they hear your voice. Doors will open for you not because of what you know, but because of who you are. Your energy will bring conviction to some, comfort to others, and clarity to those who have been searching. You will become a mirror that reveals truths people have been avoiding. You will become a catalyst for transformation without trying to be. Your life itself will become a message. But with this comes responsibility. You must guard your thoughts because they will manifest faster now. You must guard your emotions because your spiritual sensitivity is heightened. You must guard your atmosphere because your spirit absorbs more than you realize. You must guard your purpose because not everyone who smiles at you will celebrate you. Chosen one. This additional part of your journey is not about doing more, it is about becoming more. It is about aligning every part of yourself, thoughts, habits, relationships, speech, decisions with the identity heaven has revealed. It is about finally accepting that you were never called to live a small life, a quiet life, or a passive life. You were called to be a disruptor of darkness, a carrier of light, a breaker of generational patterns, a living prophecy in motion. Step into this final truth with confidence. Your emergence is not accidental, it is ordained. Everything you have lived through has been preparing you for this exact moment. Do not fear the weight of your calling. You were built for this. You were trained for this. You were chosen for this. And now you must rise into the fullness of what heaven has placed within you.